Trent Grisham is back on the New York Yankees. He has accepted his 1-year, $22.025 million qualifying offer. He will be the Yankees center fielder for the 2026 season unless they trade him. We'll talk about that. Can the Yankees move off of Grisham? What does this mean for the rest of their offseason? Can the Yankees expect good production from Grisham in 2026? We're going to discuss all of that and more right here on Fireside Yankees. If you like this video, make sure you like and subscribe. Turn on that notification bell to get notifications on our next upload. We'd greatly appreciate your support, and you guys have been great with giving that throughout the offseason so far. Now, let's just dig right into Trent Grisham's 2025 season and 2026 free agent outlook. So, Grisham this past year hit 34 home runs. He hit 235 with a 348 on base percentage and a 464 slugging percentage. He had a 125 OPS plus, a 129 WRC plus, and 3.2 wins above replacement on Fangraphs. Defensively, it was a big step back from his usual career numbers. He had -3 fielding run value, -2 outs above average, and -11 defensive runs saved. I trust fielding run value and outs above average a little bit more for defense in the outfield. I do think defensive runs saved is important, but I think the fact that it's so starkly poor for Grisham is more of an outlier than the other two metrics that indicate he was more of a solidly or slightly below average defender, which if you watched Grisham throughout the year, I think you could say that watching him wasn't an eyesore. He didn't feel like a guy who was making a bunch of bad plays out there, but there were clearly some baseballs he couldn't get to. We'll talk about that in a little bit with the defense because I do think there's a little bit of positive regression that could occur or some improvement, but that'll be a conversation for later in the video. I think what we're all focusing on is the offense because that is the biggest. I didn't think anyone saw Trent Grisham hitting 34 home runs this past year. I don't think anyone saw Grisham having an OPS plus well above 800 this past year. Like, he had an 811 OPS for the Yankees. It was one of the better marks on the team. And I do think it's important in this conversation to be very honest about what will happen next year. He's not going to have the same OPS. It will be lower than where it was last year. The question is whether he's going to be able to put up good enough offense to justify a $22 million contract. Now, projections have him at a 106 WRC plus, 18 home runs, and a 2.1 WAR in 107 games. That is, again, on Steamer projections. And if you extrapolate that over the 143 games that Grisham played, he'd be around a 2.5 WAR player with around 23 home runs on the season. So, a 23 home run guy with around a 330 projected on base percentage. I think that's a player that's worth $22 million, at least offensively. And I think when we have this conversation about what the Yankees are with Trent Grisham, what Trent Grisham's going to be with the Yankees, what this offense and what this team can look like, I think Trent Grisham is a player who last year clearly played above his own head, but also made a lot of really, really big strides offensively. His contact rates were very good. He only struck out 23.6% of the time. That's the second lowest strikeout rate of his career. The lowest swinging strike rate of his career at 7.7%. The highest barrel rate of his career at 14.2%. Average exit velocity 91.1 miles per hour. The highest of his career. I don't think that Trent Grisham fluked his way into doing this. I think Trent Grisham played and had the batted ball data, the contact rates, the walk rates of an elite hitter. If you look at his expected weighted on base average of 366, he actually underperformed his expected weighted on base average and his expected OPS on the season. If you look at free agent hitters, he was inside the top 5 in expected OPS. And that leads me to believe that this is a guy who can put up a productive season in 2026. Now, expected OPS is not predictive. These expected metrics are telling you what should have happened, not what will happen. So that is very important here. Just because he has a high expected OPS does not mean he will maintain that high expected OPS into the next season. It just means that he should have been a very good hitter. And given what he did last year, he was a very good hitter. Now, the question for what this affects for the Yankees is an interesting one. I've talked on here about believing that Jason Dominguez was going to be traded this offseason and that the organization, not that they hate the guy, not that they think he's not a hard worker, not that they have personal gripes with Dominguez. From all accounts, great dude, great clubhouse guy, hard worker, and the offensive talent is there. but the defense is so bad. I've never gotten the impression the Yankees are going to trust him out there. And with Grisham coming back to be the center fielder, you can now look at either the corner outfield or the center field market to try and acquire another outfielder, whether that's giving Cody Bellinger a big contract, if that's something that the Yankees are going to feel is the best value on the market, or going out there and acquiring a corner outfielder on the trade market, the free agent market. We just saw Taylor Ward get traded for a pretty significant piece in Grayson Rodriguez, given that Ward is a rental, but hopefully that's not the price for trades in this market, because that would be pretty bad for the Yankees. The Cubs are a team I look at and I say maybe there's some outfield mobility there. I imagine they're going to look to add an outfielder this upcoming offseason, and if you look at their free agent class for the end of the 2026 season, there's a lot of important pieces on the free agent market for them. Seiya Suzuki, Ian Happ, Nico Horner, that's 3 of their 4 or 5 best position players from the 2025 season. In their rotation, Imanaga and Boyd would both be free agents. Those are 2 pretty big pieces and pretty big horses in their staff, and guys who have been really important over the last few years. And Jameson Taillon, a free agent as well. Not really a dominant frontline starter, but over the last 2 years, a 3.45 ERA and over 295 innings in that stretch. So has been both a source of volume and a source of value on a start-to-start basis. So there's a good chunk of their roster leaving them after 2026. So maybe someone like Ian Happ can shake free in a trade, give them some more financial flexibility to make an addition in free agency, whether that's signing a Dylan Cease, bringing in a Framber Valdez, shopping at the top of that pitching market because they desperately need pitching. Maybe the Yankees could provide them with pitching, a Luis Seal, a Will Warren, who knows. But I do think the Yankees are going to have avenues to improve their offense without having to be forced into giving Cody Bellinger a big contract. And I've said this before on this podcast, I don't really believe that Bellinger on a big contract is a automatically great idea. I think pigeonholing yourself into having to do that is bad, and it's why I was really big on signing Kyle Tucker for as long as I was, because in my view, the Yankees desperately need to get a star player, and they shouldn't be paying star money for a non-star player. I think Bellinger in left field, though, is more valuable than him in center field. So I'm also, on one end, I think if the bidding gets too crazy for Bellinger, I wouldn't want the Yankees to give out that final number if it's a $190 million contract. I don't want the Yankees to be on that side of the deal. But if this remains a $150, $160 million bidding war, which is something I'm comfortable with for Bellinger, then if you have him playing left field, you're having him playing his natural elite defensive position. And then you look at your roster and you're probably going to have a 4-WAR player in Cody Bellinger, about a 2.5 to 3-WAR player in Trent Grisham. That's about 6 to 7.5 WAR out of your outfield from how median projections might look at those 2 guys. And I think that's where you generate a lot of your value from your outfield. And that is something you can't do with Jason Dominguez. That is something you can't reliably do with Spencer Jones at the moment. And on a 1-year deal, Grisham isn't affecting your long-term plans. My understanding is that the Yankees, whatever they woke up with on Wednesday morning or Tuesday morning and what they wanted to do is going to be what they want to do tonight. So I don't think that where we're sitting with the Yankees is that they have put themselves in a situation where they spent money they didn't think they were going to spend. Maybe they thought that Grisham was going to reject it, but I don't think even the worst ran organization in baseball would make an offer that they don't want the player to take. That, to me, it doesn't even make sense, right? Like you're making an offer that a player isn't forcing you to make. You're not forced. You're not compelled to make the qualifying offer. No rule in baseball states and compels a team to have to offer the qualifying offer. That is a choice. The Yankees have been very selective with that. Since the pandemic, they've only offered it to DJ LeMahieu after 2020, Anthony Rizzo after 2022 when he was a 32 home run hitter, Aaron Judge after he won the AL MVP, Juan Soto after he was a top 5 player on the planet undoubtedly in 2024, the second best hitter in baseball for my money. Those are the guys they've offered it to since the pandemic. Not Glaber, not Devin Williams, not Jameson Taillon, who got a $68 million contract, but Trent Grisham. They deemed that Trent Grisham was worth 1 year at $22 million, and projections sort of agree. Again, if you look at those steamer projections we mentioned earlier, he's someone who's going to project for about $8.8 million per win this upcoming season. That's pretty good. $8.8 million per win is pretty good. The median that people pay, some estimates have it as $8 million, other up to $11 million. So that falls into that range of worth it. Now, the other thing I want to note with Grisham is defensively, I actually do think there's a step forward he can make. So just as I think his offense is pretty clearly going to regress, I think his defense could very clearly improve in 2026. Look at his defensive metrics before and after the hamstring injury. He suffered his hamstring injury in Toronto on June 29th. At that point, he had 0 fielding run value. After that point, he had -3 fielding run value. So I'm not saying he's going to be a great defender, but I think he's more than capable of being a league average defensive center fielder and a league average to maybe even slightly above league average defensive center fielder, hitting with an 811 OPS. That would have been great. I mean, that's not what he was, but that would have been great. Now, if you shift that OPS, I think it's going to be around 740, 750, which is above average in the current run environment. The average OPS is around 700. That is pretty good. 740, 750 OPS for an average center field defense is going to provide you, again, that 2.5 to 3 WAR outcome. The question becomes if Grisham is a really good power hitter all of a sudden, if the on-base percentage can be as high as it was last year, it was around 350. Those kinds of questions. I think the on-base is more sustainable than the power. I think the walk rates and the plate discipline are real growths, and I don't think the power at 34 home runs is real. I think that is definitely the highest it will ever be. But for the Yankees, again, you're looking at a player who's a 1-year commitment. If he stinks, he's gone. If he doesn't stink, you got him for 1 year, and you've got an additional year of control over a player who's 29 years old. It's not like the 28 to 29 age seasons are years where you expect dramatic changes and shifts in production. So, again, I firmly believe the Yankees are going to be in a good spot with Grisham if they make the right moves to complete their offseason. The Trent Grisham qualifying offer, to me, is determined by what they do after the fact. If Hal Steinbrenner was not interested in spending a lot of money, this is a horrendous miscalculation. If the Yankees were willing to go out and spend a lot of money, that changes things, because then you look at the Grisham money and you go, it's an addition to the roster. Again, it comes down to Hal. What was Hal thinking financially? For Brian Cashman, if he knew Hal had a limited budget and he went to get Grisham on a qualifying offer, I think that's a questionable process. I would also say, again, I think that this spells the end for Jason Dominguez. I do not believe Jason Dominguez remains a New York Yankee after 2025. So I think this is pretty close. Like, this is pretty significant. I don't think they're going to walk away without adding an outfielder. So I do think that's important to note. But let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. This was definitely a move that I think is garnering a lot of reactions. And look, I understand if Hal Steinbrenner is not going to spend, this is really bad. If he is willing to spend, then this is pretty good. That's how I view it. If the Yankees are willing to still sign a Bellinger, maybe go after a Tucker, add to their outfield on the trade market, something of that sort to bring in a guy who I think could be a 120 OPS plus hitter and play left field for you, that'd be great. I still want the Yankees to add to their rotation and bullpen. I do think those are some of their weakest points on the roster right now. If you look, again, at projections, I know people don't really like projections, and that's fine. But I do think projections are a valuable tool in this kind of equation and in these kinds of conversations. The Yankees project to have the best batting WAR, which means that's position player WAR, at 29.4. That's better than the Dodgers, better than the Mets, better than the Mariners, better than the Blue Jays. The question is their pitching staff. Their pitching staff is what really needs help right now. And I think that's where, if you're the Yankees, you need to get your value right now. It's through your pitching staff, trying to find ways to improve that pitching staff, get better defensively. If you can get better defensively, that's going to improve your ERA projections, your ability to prevent runs, and you got to find a little more punch in your offense. Whether that's bringing back Bellinger, whether that's adding a guy on the trade market. Again, I'm noted Ian Happ. Not saying he's going to get traded, but I just mentioned him because I know the Yankees have had interest in a few deadlines ago, so that is where that's at. But let me know, again, what you guys think. We appreciate your continued support here at Fireside Yankees, and we'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out, everybody.